Hello and welcome to Jesus for Asia Now. I'm Natalie Wood, and today I have my husband John with me, and we'll be talking with our friend Tim Maddocks, who is a missionary in Cambodia. Welcome, Tim, to the show. So nice to have you here. And what did you just say?
I said hello.
Okay.
In which language?
Cambodian or the Khmer language.
Excellent. Can you teach us?
Jom Riep So.
Jom Rip Saw.
Jom Riep So.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. So how long have you been in Cambodia?
I went to Cambodia in 1992.
And how did you choose going to Cambodia?
God actually chose for me. We had decided to join ADRA and do development work. And ADRA offered me a position in Africa or in Cambodia. Wendy, my wife, and I had both sided for Africa, but left the choice to God, and He sent us to Cambodia.
Okay. So when you got to Cambodia, was it a beautiful tropical paradise?
Cambodia had been through years and years of civil war, and it was still coming out of it. There's still a civil war going on at the time in 1992. It was really in quite a bad way.
Wow.
Now, you talk about a civil war, but this was the home of the killing fields and Pol Pot, so it was a pretty traumatic.
Yeah, they wiped out about a quarter of the population of Cambodia during the war years.
Wow. Wow.
That's hard to even imagine.
Yeah, it's hard to find someone who wasn't affected in a very close personal way by it.
Yeah.
And you took your family there.
God's choice. Not only did I take my family there, but all my family are still there with me 25 years later.
Okay, well, we want to get more into your story. We have some pictures to share also. But you started out working with ADRA, and now you're doing something completely different. So what happened there?
Well, while we were working with ADRA, we were also church planting, because immediately when I arrived in Siem Reap, I realized I was probably the only Christian in the town. So I had a greater responsibility than just helping rice farmers improve their rice yields. So we began church planting in town. And during that period of time, God began to speak to me and ask me to work full-time for Him, doing church planting and training church planters and church leaders. And so in 1996, we began what we call SALT Ministries, and we moved away from working with ADRA to working full-time for God, and God has kept us in that work ever since.
Okay, so you said you moved away from working for ADRA. Now, with ADRA, were you a volunteer or were you being paid? Or
I was being paid, and although the salary wasn't super high, I had free housing, free electricity, free use of a vehicle.
working for God full-time. What does that look like as far as your wages, so to speak?
Well, I got my last paycheck December 31, 1995.
Okay.
So working for God meant trusting Him to supply all our needs. He also told me to use all the funds that we had saved to get the work started that He was asking us to do.
Right. So you had to buy land. So
Yes.
what kind of land are you talking about? A little place for one house? You said houses.
So God impressed us that we should build a training center. And so we needed a classroom, we needed accommodation for students and their families. And I felt about 20 acres would be about right. And so God impressed me where to buy the land. It was like the worst of worst land as far as farming was concerned. And so the farmers were willing to sell it, which was a good thing. And after buying it, then God spoke to me again and said, expand the land. And it's like, well, we don't have much money, and we've already spent a chunk of it buying the first part of land. We have to develop it, and you want me to buy more land. So I asked God to give me a sign, and that was to show me in the Bible. And so I took a Bible and let it fall open and put my finger on a text without looking at what the text said, and then brought the Bible and read it. And it said, expand the borders. And I did this 4 times, and each time the intent of the text was to enlarge. And so I said, okay, God, I understand this is your will. And we went ahead and bought more land to make a total of 42 acres.
Okay. So the first picture we have is of your first house there?
Yes.
on the property. Okay, describe to us what this house is that we're seeing here.
Well, this is a typical house for the poor people. And this house actually cost about $300 to build. And it took local people about 3 days to put together.
Wow.
And the reason we did this was because God had told us that He wanted us to live like the local people. And so we started living like the poorest of the poor. And this was a way, I think, that God wanted to help the local people see that we were there to help them, not to exploit them.
Okay, so your house was made of grass.
Palm leaves, bamboo, and wooden poles.
And where was Wendy's kitchen?
Wendy's kitchen was right beside the steps. The steps just behind where we're standing. And so it was outside. And it was just a little clay cooking pot type thing.
Stove thing.
You put your firewood in and lit it up and put the saucepan on top. And yeah, she was very gracious in being subject to such difficult conditions for cooking. But she did a good job.
How old were your sons when you went?
When we went to Cambodia, Shannon was almost 1 year of age and Caleb was 3.5.
Okay.
So here in this picture, Caleb's 7 and Shannon's 4.5.
Wow. So they've grown up their whole lives in Cambodia, basically.
Pretty much, yes. And they speak the language fluently. They read and write the language as well.
So when I say the word home, you think of Australia?
Home is where my pillow is. No, home is definitely Cambodia. But also knowing it's where God wants me to be.
So you chose to live in this house so that you could become more like the local people. What kind of ministry do you call that?
We call that an incarnational ministry. So becoming like the people that you're working with.
And the purpose of that is?
So that they will accept you, so that they will see that you're not better than them, that you appreciate their way of living.
To remove as many obstacles to them seeing the gospel as possible.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so it was a dangerous area that you moved into, away from the downtown part of the city. A lot of people were robbed at gunpoint. Have you had that experience?
Yes, one night about 9 o'clock at night, we heard a disturbance outside this little thatched house. And as I went out with a flashlight to see what it was, and there were 3 AK-47 rifles pointing at me.
Whoa. Whoa.
So what did you do?
I stepped back in the doorway because I didn't want them going into the one-room house where my kids and my wife was.
And then what?
They asked for money. And so my wife gave them the money she had, which was a very small amount of Cambodian money. And they looked at it in the light that was coming through the door and threw it back into the house. So they were obviously upset. And at that point, one of them stepped up to me and he put the gun just here. So I'm looking down the black barrel and I can see the angry face and I can see his finger was on the trigger.
Anyway.
So what happened next?
I began to think about the fact that I was going to die.
Yeah.
And as I thought about it, the thought came to my mind, do I really believe that I'm saved by the blood of Jesus? And as I thought about that, the answer was emphatically yes. And God just filled my heart with this warm sense of joy and peace. That's a really hard thing to describe. So in this moment where I think I'm about to die, I'm in this euphoric sense of joy.
Were you smiling?
I have no idea. I think things like that, they just happen so fast. The brain's working at light speed, and it seems like a long time, but it wasn't a long time.
Wow. So you have this sense of peace, and what happens next?
One of the 3 guys steps up to the one with the gun and pushes him over. He must have thought he was really going to pull the trigger. And the guy stumbled, dropped the gun, and as he got up, he grabbed the gun by the barrel and swung it and hit me in the leg with the steel handle that was on the gun.
Wow.
Should have broken your leg.
So did that, what happened to your leg?
Well, it should have broken my leg. My legs are really skinny. But and he hit me with quite a lot of force. But it was as if my legs were cemented to the floor. There was no damage to the bones. I did have a dent in the muscle for quite some time after that. But I then said to them, I'll get you some money. And I walked across the house. Wendy, my wife, stepped into the doorway to keep them out. And I had 2 bundles of money there in the house. One was about $18 in Cambodian money, and the other was $1,000 in the US money.
That's what they were going after.
Well, I figured they didn't know I had $1,000 in there.
Right.
Because normally I wouldn't have $1,000. But that day I'd got money out of the bank to buy wood to build houses for our lay training program, and I wasn't able to buy the wood. And I couldn't put the money back in the bank. So I had to have it with me in the house. So I figured, well, they don't know it's here, and it's God's money, so I'm going to give them the smaller bundle. And so I handed that out through the door to them, and they looked at it and disappeared into the darkness.
Wow.
Wow, that must have been quite intense for you and Wendy. What did you do next?
We got down on our knees and prayed, thanking God for his protection.
Yeah.
You might ask me, why did God allow that to happen?
Yeah.
And that was a good question.
Thank you.
My wife had just been talking just before they came and said it's important for us to experience what the local people experience. And one of the things they experienced and really feared was being robbed at gunpoint. And so just 30 seconds later, this event happens. I don't think God engineered it. I think it was a satanic thing, but God used it. And the local people fully expected us to pack up our family and leave, but we didn't. We just carried on, trusting that God would protect us.
Wow.
And that broke down a lot of barriers in our community. And they began to accept us as part of their community because we were willing to put up with the things that their community had to put up with.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing. And so then out of that came your church plant.
That was a significant point in helping our church plant move forward.
Amazing.
Wow. So how long did you live in the first house, the grass house?
We lived in the grass house for 1 year.
Okay, and then you built a new house.
Yes, we built a 2-story wooden house like what the more wealthy people in the village lived in.
Okay. Describe that to us. Are there screens on the windows? No, you're not having screens on the windows,
No
right?
screens. It has shutters. It's not lined inside. We did have 1 glass window that looked into our bird cage so we could enjoy our parrots and they couldn't fly into the house.
Did you have an inside toilet?
In this house, yes. We had built the toilet inside.
Okay.
And the kitchen?
Kitchen was downstairs. It was a very small kitchen, but it was much better than the kitchen
Than
Wendy had had in the
outside.
previous house. She thought it was luxurious.
Covered. And how did Wendy do the washing in these houses?
Well, outside the house, we had a ring well. And
What's
so
a ring well?
It's a well with concrete rings going
Okay.
down into the ground.
So you lift the water?
Yeah, we have rope tied to a bucket and just throw the bucket in and pull it up. And she had some bowls, pour the water in, and then she washed by hand.
Wow.
Okay, and then how did she dry clothes?
Hung it up on the line.
Okay.
So you'd wring out the clothes and then take them out, shake them out, hang them up.
Yeah. So as far as bathing, I mean, you didn't have the indoor shower at the first house and you had the bathroom inside at the second house, but what happened with bathing?
Well, bath time was really fun because we could bathe as a family because you bathe outside in the open, everybody can see, so you have to dress modestly enough so that you're not exposed. And so we used to have baths as a family and we'd have conversations where we're taking a bath, and it was actually a really happy time.
So then while you were at this house, what was your main mission task? I mean, God put you on this land for a purpose.
God's main task for us was to train lay people to be leaders in local churches and to go out and start new churches.
Okay, so describe the church at that time, the Church of Cambodia.
In 1992, when I arrived, there was basically no church.
Oh.
So there was just a handful of people meeting in the capital city, Phnom Penh. But there were people returning from the refugee camps in Thailand who had become Christian, become Adventist, and some of them had been trained to be leaders. So they were coming in and they were sent out to start new churches in different cities around the country. And because of the trouble that the country had been through, a lot of people were looking for hope. And so we found that many people were turning to Christ when they heard the good news of salvation through Jesus. But these people are coming out of a Buddhist mindset.
Right.
and often poorly educated. And so it's a huge leap to become an Adventist.
Right.
And so they needed time and they needed teaching.
Yes.
So our lay training program, that was a 4-month-long live-in program, was opportunity to deepen their faith in God and deepen their understanding of the Bible and prepare them to go out and share with others.
So how many 4-month training programs did you do?
We did 12 over a 10-year period.
10 years.
And about 400 people attended.
Okay, so then that was training people to go back into other areas. Do you have any stories about any of these church planters that you'd like to share?
There were 3 young people that came to one of our trainings, and they were Cambodian. And at the end of the training, the mission, the Cambodia Adventist mission, using global mission funds from the General Conference, sent them way up into the northeast of the country to a province called Ratnakiri. And they were witnessing to Cambodian people, but a lot of tribal people as well, as there's quite a number of different tribal groups up in that area. And they brought a number of tribal people to Jesus. One of those tribal people then came and trained also.
Okay.
And then he went back and started sharing with his people. And this picture that we see here, this is a picture of one of his worship groups, which I was blessed to be able to visit, and also to baptize about 20 people that had come to know Christ from his tribal group. And they were the first people from that tribe to be baptized as Seventh-day Adventists.
Wow. So the church really grew quickly.
The church was growing very quickly, like 500-600 people a year.
Wow. What was Wendy doing aside from washing clothes and pounding out the meals? What was she doing during this time?
She was homeschooling our children, and she was running a medical clinic, and she was also teaching health and how to reach children with the gospel to our lay trainees. So she was very busy also.
Yeah. Did she have like medical training?
She did a 3-year diploma in podiatry, foot care. And so she had basic medical training, but she read books, and if she couldn't find the answer to someone's illness, she took them to a doctor or a hospital and learned from the doctor, and then was able to treat that illness in the future. She also taught herself midwifery and has delivered over 55 babies.
Wow, so this clinic, is that still running today?
It ran for just 4 years. The government asked us to close it because we weren't qualified medical people. We didn't have an agreement with them to operate it. But in that 4 years, she treated about 6,000 people.
Amazing.
And it really helped to break down barriers as well, because people saw that we were there to help them.
Right.
Wow.
So describe what's happening in this picture.
This picture is a picture of a baby dedication. Now, although I'm a biologist and teacher by training, God had told me He wanted me to be a pastor, and I just couldn't understand how that was going to be possible. But these days I do a lot of pastoring, and here I'm in a home doing a baby dedication for actually 2 families. Here we have an auntie and her niece being dedicated at the same time.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it truly is God qualifies the called.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so then you also got involved with church planting on your own property.
God had asked us to plant a church in our local community because there weren't any Christians in our local community when we moved there.
Wow.
And that church has grown. And so here we have our current church building. We started building this in 1998, and we completed it in the year 2002. Took us a while to get it done.
It's a unique design.
We felt that we should use a design that the local people identified as a building for worship. And so I looked at Buddhist temples and selected one, made some modifications, and then we built that building. And so this is what we have.
Inside, there's no chairs.
The Buddhist religion and the Khmer culture have a lot of really respectful things built in. And one of them is that when people come to worship, they take their shoes off before they enter the building.
Kind of like Moses before the burning bush?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And they also sit on the floor. They won't sit in the lotus position, the position that you see Buddha sitting in, because that would be showing disrespect to the Buddha. So they sit with their legs folded to the side, and So to them, this is a respectful position to be in during worship.
Okay.
And that's beautiful because in the Bible, we find that people are down on the floor worshiping God. And so we decided we'd adopt that for our church. It has a couple of other advantages. You don't have to buy chairs and you can get twice as many people in the building.
So you were doing church planting for quite a while, or church planter training.
We were doing church planting and church planter training simultaneously. So our church planter trainees were helping us with our local church plant.
Excellent. And God had you start out another project at that time.
After the first training, we asked one of our trainees, a local lady who had had 3 years of education, to start teaching school. There were a lot of children in our community who were too poor to go to the government school, and so they weren't getting any literacy training at all. So we allocated a small veranda area for her to use as classroom and to teach kids from the poorest of the poor.
Wow.
And she started with about 20 students, but it became clear very soon that God had much bigger plans for this tiny school. And over the years, it grew into a kindergarten to grade 12 school. And we teach in English and we teach in the Khmer language. We teach a lot of vocational subjects as well. Well, the primary goal of the school is to prepare our young people to be missionaries for Christ.
How many students do you have attending the school at this point?
In our main school, we have 310, but we also have a couple of very small satellite schools.
Wow.
So we have about 20 more kids between those two schools.
Amazing. So here's one of your classrooms.
This is the Year 12 students.
And what is this building?
This building is our dormitory and cafeteria. Very early on in a school's history, church members began asking me, can they send their children to our school? But they lived way off in the countryside. And so we accepted a small number of kids, boys. Basically, we let the boys sleep wherever we could find a space, and the girls slept with the lady we hired as a cook to cook food for them. But it just kept growing and growing, and there became an obvious need to have a proper place for them. And through the Collegedale Church, we were blessed to receive money and help to get started on this building. And today there are 80 children in the dormitory, and most of them pay about 20%, 25% of what it costs us to keep them.
Wow.
But that's as much as their families can pay, and so we depend on God to provide the rest.
So you have a girls' dormitory on one side, boys' dormitory on the other, and a cafeteria in the middle.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
This building looks kind of unique.
Yeah, I have to thank you for this building. It was you that inspired us to get into the media ministry. And I went and met you up in Chiang Mai one time and asked for the plans for the building you were building there, took them back to Siem Reap and modified them a little bit and went ahead and built our own media center.
Wow. So this is a TV studio, offices, editing bays.
Yeah, we record videos in here. We translate E.G. White books here. And we use it as our administrative office as well for our ministry.
Well, it's neat to see what's going on, and we want to see your family also. So would you share with us who these people are that we're looking at?
Yeah, this is my beautiful wife, Wendy, together with our granddaughter, Clara. And Clara is the daughter of Caleb and Savan. And here we have Shannon, my younger son, and his wife, Sreya. Sreya grew up in the orphanage, and she is now the director of the orphanage.
Wow.
So she has a real good grasp on what it's like to live there. And so she has a real heart for the kids. But she also understands the challenges that the parents go through because she gave them lots of challenges when she was there. Shannon developed a passion for Pathfinders as he was growing up. Eventually became leader of our local Pathfinder club. And the Cambodia Adventist mission has appointed him as honorary Pathfinder leader for the country.
Wow.
So I pay his salary, but about half of his time is spent working on materials to help advance Pathfinders throughout Cambodia.
So you lived in that two-story house for 17 years. Why would you ever want to leave?
The reason we chose the site for that two-story house was it was a nice high piece of land, but it had lots of termite hills on it.
Uh-oh.
And we flattened the termite hills and built the house. It took the termites 17 years to fight back, but finally they managed to get into our house and to eat out a number of the main columns that held the house. So there were 4 columns out of 12 that you could just pass your hand right through.
Oh boy.
And it was looking very unsafe, so we decided before it collapsed on us that we would demolish it.
Yeah.
And we would build a new home.
That's a really good idea. And so this new home is made out of cement.
This is brick and cement, and hopefully termite proof.
And it's a very unique kind of home.
Yeah, our community has changed in the last 22 years. So from being an extremely poor community, the town has grown up and grown out and now reached us. So we have middle-class people living in our community that have 2-story houses with air conditioning and cars parked in the garage.
Wow.
So we decided that it was time that we moved up with our community. And so we built something that was more modern and easier to live in. But we really wanted to have a place where we just felt at peace. And we both love the outdoors. And so we decided we'd build a house that had the outdoors inside. So we put large skylights into the roof, left a hole right in the middle of the roof so the rain could come in. And then we built a garden down the center of our house with a fish pond and a waterfall.
And a waterfall, yeah.
Now you said your degree in university was
In biology.
in biology, so that interest is coming back now.
That's right, yeah.
So what is it that's driving the economy of this area that you're in?
We're about 6 miles from a very famous temple called Angkor Wat.
Okay.
And tourists are streaming into Siem Reap to see this 12th century temple. And we get about 2 million plus
Wow.
tourists a year coming into the city. So of course, that's a lot of money flowing into the city, and that's spurring the growth and development of our city.
Well, Tim, I know that you have more stories to share. Thank you for sharing with us. And we'd like to let you know that we are doing another episode with Tim to capture more of the stories and specifically what God is challenging Tim and Wendy with to reach out to these tourists that are coming to their area. I'll just let you know it's called Butterfly Paradise, and you won't want to miss the pictures and video that are coming. If you would like to be a part of this ministry, please send your tax-deductible love gifts to Jesus for Asia, P.O. Box 1221, Collegedale, Tennessee, 37315. Call us at 423-413-7321 or visit our website at jesusforasia.org. May God richly bless you until we see you next time on Jesus for Asia Now.